28th of October 2011. Drug seeking. Attention all drug seeking morons. Attention. Please read. I'm smarter than you. Have I said that before? I think so, but it bears repeating. You may think you're very clever and have it all figured out. You can try to claim you're allergic to ibuprofen, aspirin, naproxen, Toradol, Ultram, Tylenol, paracetamol, and everything except Dilaudid. But you cannot fool me. I'm amazed that people are so arrogant that they think that they can trick me into giving them narcotics. Last night, two 22-year-olds were in a car accident, and both claimed to have severe, crippling back pain. Red flag 1. I was suspicious, so I pulled up the driver's prescription record. Didn't know I could do that, did you, smarty pants? In the past few weeks, he had prescriptions for codeine, Vicodin, Percocet, 2 benzodiazepines, Ambien, and Viagra. Yes, Viagra. Red flag 2. Oh, and his arms were covered in track marks. Red flag 3. After a CT scan, both their spines were normal. Please, control your surprise. I watched as both were propping themselves up in bed and twisting and turning, all things that people with back injuries cannot do. Red flag 264. I accused them of drug seeking, and the driver immediately threatened to sue me for malpractice. I happily gave him my hospital ID and a pen and told him to write my name down and have his lawyer call me. Not the best idea, threatening to sue the guy who you're trying to con some narcotics from. The driver's father, who's an oncologist, came and picked them up, and they amazingly were able to get up and walk out. It's a miracle. You're both cretins, and you're busted. 31st of October 2011. Truth is stranger than fiction. I know that the truth is stranger than fiction is a cliche, but it's completely true. I can't make this stuff up, I'm just not that creative. Last time I was on call, I got a call at 3 AM. I hate those. About a level 1 trauma. That's generally a person who's very close to dying. It was a woman who had fallen down the stairs and was unconscious. Even at 3 AM, my heart starts beating a little faster when I hear the patient is level 1. However, my palpitations soon changed to amusement. The woman arrived a few minutes later without a scratch on her. The second I laid eyes on her, I knew that something didn't exactly add up. And then the paramedics launched into her history. She was drinking at home and passed out, so her husband, also drunk, decided to carry her upstairs to bed. Halfway up the stairs, he dropped his cell phone. Now what would you do? Would you A. Ignore the phone and continue carrying your bride towards her peaceful slumber? B. Bring her back downstairs, get the phone, go retrieve her and start over? Or C. Grab the phone and risk dropping her? I think by now you've guessed he chose C, and he dropped her. She landed in a jumbled mess of inebriated unconsciousness at the bottom of the stairs, still passed out drunk. The paramedics didn't know if she was unconscious because of the alcohol, massive bleeding in her brain, or both. Of course, it turns out that she was completely fine, except for her blood alcohol level of nearly 0.2. Don't drink and walk. This one may be a few years old, but it makes me giggle every time I think about it. A young guy covered with tattoos, in my neck of the woods that usually indicates a gang member, came in shot in the buttock. Nothing is quite as amusing as a grown man crying like a schoolgirl because he was shot in the ass. I usually ask these rock stars what happened, and here's the guy's explanation. I was gonna shoot this a-hole, but he grabbed my gun before I could shoot him, and that mother effer shot me in the ass. Yes. Yes, he did. 1st of November 2011. Learning from mistakes. I've said before that life is a series of learning opportunities, and who we are is defined by how we react and learn. Some people, unfortunately, either choose not to learn or are too stupid to realize a learning opportunity when they see it. An older gentleman came to my trauma bay having suffered severe burns to his face and neck. Now, burn victims have a rather unique odour about them, much like cooking beef or pork have distinctive smells. Disgusting analogy, I know. But this guy smelled more like cigarette smoke. Plus, the distribution of his burns was a little strange. It turns out that he had severe emphysema from smoking and was on home oxygen, but he just continued smoking, while the oxygen was flowing. Free-flowing oxygen plus ignition source, a lit cigarette, plus fuel, facial hair, equals big boom. While I'm on the subject of burns, another older lady came in having sustained 3rd-degree burns to her shoulder. She admitted to falling asleep while smoking, and the lit cigarette set her blanket on fire. When I examined her shoulder, the burned area seemed to have a strange checkerboard appearance to it, which I thought may have been transferred from the blanket. Nope, said the lady. Oh, that's a skin graft from the last time this happened. 4th of November 2011. Drugs are bad. I don't think I can stress this enough. Drugs make you crazy, stupid and insane, and they make you lie. A patient of mine that I've been seeing for several weeks with an ulcer on her leg had herself admitted to the hospital because of severe pain in her leg. She admitted to me that she used to use crack cocaine and PCP, but she swore up and down that she was clean for several months. I looked at her ulcer, and it was pristine. There was no sign of infection. An MRI showed nothing except a superficial ulcer, and her labs were all normal. Except for a urine drug screen, which was positive for, dramatic pause, cocaine and PCP. I love it when people try to claim that the test was a false positive, or that there simply must have been a mix-up in the lab. The lab equipment doesn't lie, folks. Why can't people just be honest with me? Seventh of November 2011. Vaccines. I had the chickenpox when I was 8. It sucked. I had a belt of pox around my waist that itched so much it made me want to crawl out of my skin. If I had had the opportunity to have a vaccine rather than go through the intense itching, I would have jumped on it. Now, there is a vaccine for chickenpox. Huzzah! It's 85 to 90% effective, and even if you do catch chickenpox after getting the vaccine, you'll only get a mild case of it. That's great news, right? Right? Well. Unfortunately, some blithering idiots have something against vaccines because another blithering idiot falsified his data to make it look like the MMR vaccine was linked to autism. That wasn't just a little bit of data massaging, it was outright bald-faced fraud. But some parents still believe that vaccines are bad, so they turn to, well, let's say, other methods of getting their kids immune to the chickenpox virus. Some geniuses on Facebook have started forming groups that either look for pox parties to share the virus, thereby purposely infecting everyone, or to mail a lollipop that an infected child has licked. Yes, seriously. What the ever-loving F is wrong with these people? Fortunately, sending diseases through the mail is illegal. I hope these morons go to prison and pick up some colourful diseases of their own. of November 2011. Let my people go. When relatives are sick, you want them to get better. I get that, and I support it. When someone is critically ill, you want the doctors to do everything possible, right? Well, most of the time, you have to look at the whole picture, not just a snapshot in time. Sometimes doing everything isn't the right thing to do. Sometimes it's okay to let people go. The gentleman I was asked to consult on this evening is just one of those people. He's in a nursing home, bedbound, non-verbal. He developed an acute abdomen, meaning he needs emergency surgery for some intra-abdominal catastrophe. He was near death, and I told his next of kin that he would likely die with or without surgery. She wanted everything done, and on exploration, his entire small bowel was dead, gangrene, not compatible with life. Cases like this make me feel helpless because the patients are unfixable. Sometimes, the humane thing to do is nothing. 11th of November 2011. Excitement! My heart always beats a little faster when my trauma pager goes off. Then when I look at what's coming in, I see gunshot wound or stabbing. My heart beats a little faster still. Is it a stabbing to the heart? A gunshot wound to the abdomen? The anticipation is exciting, but the results are often underwhelming. At 5 p.m, I found out that we would be getting a stabbing victim. I rushed down to the trauma room where the nurse told me that it was a prison inmate who was stabbed in the abdomen. That's always nerve-wracking. What did the psycho use? A knife? A sharpened toothbrush? And what did it penetrate? Intestine? Colon? Stomach? Liver? About 5 minutes later, the patient was wheeled in wearing his traditional orange prison jumpsuit, handcuffed to the gurney. He looked like he weighed about 450 pounds. They move him over to the hospital gurney, and the guard just sort of looks at me and grins. He stabbed himself, Doc. You just have to see it to believe it. So I pulled back the sheet to see. A spoon. Yes, a spoon sticking out of his abdomen. A plastic spoon. I looked up at the guard again, and he smiled at me as if to say, I told you. So I asked the patient what happened, and he told me very matter-of-factly that he inserted the spoon into his abdomen. He had already had a wound there. And why did he do that? I asked him. The voices told me to. Of course they did. Fortunately, this guy's abdominal wall was so thick and his exam was so benign that I immediately knew there was no way the spoon did any real damage. So I reached for the spoon to pull it out when he said, "There's a pen in there too, Doc." Of course there is. So I pulled out the spoon, fished around and pulled out a regulation prison issue safety pen and released him back into the wild. November 14th, 2011. Mondegreens. Legend has it that writer Sylvia Wright misheard the lyrics to The Bonny Earl of Murray when she was a child. The actual lyrics are, "Thou have slain the Earl of Murray and laid him on the green," but what she heard was, "Thou have slain the Earl of Murray and Lady Mondegreen," and the Mondegreen was born. Fortunately, these aren't limited to songs. There are medical Mondegreens abound. Some, like old-timers disease, Alzheimer's, are quite descriptive, but wrong nonetheless. Yesterday, a patient told me that his legs always swelled because of his very close veins, varicose veins. Another patient came to my office complaining of pain in her biblical hernia, umbilical. Fortunately, the fireballs in her Eucharist, fibroids in her uterus, didn't bother her. Some were a bit harder to decipher. It took me a good 5 minutes to figure out that the lady with 65 roses actually had cystic fibrosis, and the little girl with smiling mighty Jesus really was suffering from spinal meningitis.